From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Brazilians have woken up to a new incoming president, the far-right Jair Bolsonaro, after a sweeping victory in Sunday's elections. People in the streets of Rio de Janeiro are coming to terms with Bolsonaro's win. However, there are mixed reactions. Some have welcomed the results, saying change was needed. Others are fearful.
These elections in reality have revealed the worst of mankind. They have shown the soul of human being. Everything they have spoken about has been revealed during these elections. That is how I feel about it. And I feel sad, really sad, but we are going to move forwards.
Bolsonaro was elected president with 55% of the votes. This according to the country's Supreme Electoral Court, with 99% of the votes counted. Fernando Haddad of the Workers' Party lost with 45% of the vote. As the results came through, supporters of Jair Bolsonaro celebrated with fireworks in Rio de Janeiro. Thousands of people gathered outside his home to congratulate him. Waving flags, they cheered for Bolsonaro as they listened to his victory speech. The military also took to the streets to celebrate the win.
Now this country is going to move forward because of my captain, my president. He's not homophobic, he's a man of God. He's a man of character, he's not corrupt. He will fight for all Brazilians because for him, there are no gays, lesbians, blacks or whites. We are a group. We are all united.
Let's listen to what Jair Bolsonaro had to say just after his win was confirmed.
I am very happy. A mission isn't chosen or discussed. It is fulfilled. Together, we will fulfill the mission of saving Brazil. A big hug to everyone and stay with God.
Workers' Party presidential candidate Fernando Haddad conceded defeat in a speech to supporters in Sao Paulo. Following the victory of Jair Bolsonaro, he spoke about the huge task ahead, saying that he and his party will work in the name of democracy and freedom. Riot police were deployed to contain protesters after the far-right candidate won the election. People took to the streets of Rio de Janeiro, and riot police fired tear gas on protesters in Sao Paulo. Protesters yelled "El Inao," a known slogan against Bolsonaro. Many Brazilians are concerned that Bolsonaro will not respect human rights, civil liberties, and freedom of speech. Some remember the government of Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva and its focus on social issues.
I am in mourning, not for me, but for Brazil, which doesn't deserve this. It doesn't deserve this ignorance. The Brazilian people are ignorant. Brazil owes a lot to Lula.
Earlier, we asked our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Brian Mir, about military marches supporting Bolsonaro.
The military is 100% behind Bolsonaro. You know, he's planning on appointing 3 generals to cabinet positions, and his vice president is a military general. So we interpret this as almost as a return to military rule, really.
Bolsonaro supporters also gathered outside the prison in Curitiba, where the former president Lula da Silva is in jail. They let off fireworks and chanted, "Lula stay in prison." Then they staged a mock funeral for Lula and his Workers' Party. The founder of the PT is serving a 12-year sentence for alleged corruption, but he is still seeking to prove his innocence. During the campaign, Jair Bolsonaro promised to let Lula rot in prison.
The far-right candidate said he will consider privatizing state-owned companies to fight the fiscal deficit. Although he hasn't detailed what companies will face privatization, experts are pointing to the oil company Petrobras and the Banco do Brasil. The country has more than 100 state companies, of which 18 depend on government funding. His government plans also include a radical fiscal reform that aims at reducing taxes for businesses. Despite this, Bolsonaro has vowed to cut taxes and has rejected taxes on financial transactions. Regarding the pension system, Bolsonaro has said a reform is necessary, but it needs to be changed gradually from how it works today. He has promised to create a new fund where workers can save their pensions and manage their own resources. He could also reform government social programs and subsidies. Bolsonaro is expected to follow a free market economic policy. Although China is one of the country's biggest commercial partners, the far-right candidate wants to get closer to the United States, making this the most important commercial tie for Brazil. He has criticized protectionism and subsidies to local industries. Finally, his government plan contemplates an independent central bank as a way to limit political interference. But he has said that he wants to maintain the same board or one with similar views. Bolsonaro has already announced that economist and investor Paulo Guedes will be his pick for economy minister to lead the country's reforms.
So what are the international implications of Jair Bolsonaro's election? We're joined now from Northampton in Massachusetts by the historian and political analyst Vijay Prashad. Hello Vijay, thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
How surprised were you by the victory of such an extreme right-wing figure in Latin America's biggest country?
Well, to be honest, I was not surprised that he won the election, given that he had such a strong showing in the first round. But also what's not surprising is that Mr. Bolsonaro is not unique. He is part of a global trend that includes the victory of Mr. Rodrigo Duterte to the presidency of the Philippines, Narendra Modi in India, Orbán in Hungary, and of course Donald Trump in the United States. Mr. Bolsonaro is more extreme than them in many ways, and I would say more dangerous. But this is part of a global trend of the far right coming to power in countries through the ballot box, through democratic means.
So what sort of an impact do you think the election of Bolsonaro will have on the right across Latin America?
Sadly, I think it'll give courage to people. It'll, embolden other far-right figures. But let me just say something that I think people need to focus on, which is that Mr. Bolsonaro has promised to Ministry of the Environment in Brazil. He's promised to take Brazil out of the Paris Climate Change Accord and to begin aggressive mining inside the Amazon. And it needs to be said, if Brazil begins to destroy the Amazon, this is going to have catastrophic impact not only for South America, Americas, but for the world, because the Amazon functions as a sink of carbon, and climate change out of control if Mr. Bolsonaro is his way. So apart from the other social problems, apart from the confidence he's going to give to the far right across South America, I worry greatly about the environmental policy or the lack of one that Mr. Bolsonaro is going to drive.
And what lessons should the left internationally be drawing from yesterday's result, and what should the left be doing about it?
Well, I would say that one of the first things we need to pay attention to is the manipulation of desolation, the manipulation of despair. It is true that neoliberal capitalism has failed millions of people, tens of millions of people. But it's also true that the far right has figured out how to manipulate this desolation into support for its agenda. And we need to really think hard how to bring back key parts of the world's population away from the far right. We have to think very hard how the far right has used social media, particularly WhatsApp, to manipulate emotions and drive its agenda. I think really the issue is how to win the hearts and minds of people back from the toxic policies of the far right.
Well, thank you so much, Vijay, for sharing this information with us today.
Thanks a lot.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur. The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. One Honduran migrant has been killed near the Guatemala-Mexico border on his way to the U.S. 26-year-old Henry Diaz was hit in the head by a rubber bullet. The Mexican security forces shot at a group of migrants as they tried to rush into border fence. Several others were injured. Diaz died on the way to the hospital in the Guatemalan border city of Tucumán.
He was shot with a rubber bullet, which can actually cause such a wound. We can't confirm the time he died, but we can confirm it was this wound that caused his death.
The Mexican government has condemned the violent events that took place on the border with Guatemala. Mexican government rejects the violence that happened in the border with Guatemala and reminds that the only way to come into Mexico is following migrant legislation. The Mexican government has respected the constitutional frame and human rights of migrants. The Guatemalan police also used repression against the migrant caravan trying to cross into Mexico. Our correspondent Pablo Perez was there.
After days of waiting, more than 1,000 migrants decided to advance to the international bridge that divides Guatemala and Mexico. The closure of this border has prevented them from advancing. They come from several countries.
We are not here representing a border or a country. We're here representing all of Central America.
Although Central Americans share many reasons for migrating, some, like Nelly, are not seeking economic improvement. She wants to find her son, who is missing in Mexico.
It's difficult knowing he could be alive or dead. Only God knows, so that's my goal. I have soul and feet, but I need to know if he's dead or alive.
Although Guatemala is part of the Central American Agreement on Free Movement, which allows citizens of Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Guatemala to travel freely, the Guatemalan police resorted to force, firing tear gas to stop the migrants. Among those affected by the repression were a number of families with children.
I fled from Honduras, where they also treat us badly. We want to escape from violence, and here there is more violence. We just want a free country for our kids.
Before them, an unwanted reality. The Mexican border remains closed. Despite the police violence, the Central American migrants are not giving up on their attempt to travel north.
The main group of the migrant caravan continued its journey northwards through Mexico. They have now reached the town of Santiago Niltepec in the state of Oaxaca after a stop at Tapanatepec.
During the last stop, migrants waited in long queues to receive the money their relatives sent them from the United States and their home countries.
Our family sent money for us to keep our march going. With the money, we can take transport because we have to walk a lot. And there are many single mothers in the group.
However, the majority of people eat what the Mexican people have to offer them. In Panapatepec, for instance, migrants ate bean tamales and green sauce for breakfast.
People from different towns cooked tamales for us and brought them for us today. Local women, men, and children have helped us.
Despite the hot weather and tiredness, people remain positive and patiently wait instructions to continue their march towards the next stop. Some people use the time during their halt to clean their clothes and take bath in the closest river.
We want to thank Guatemala and the good people from Mexico who have supported us with food, water, soap, doctors, and clothes for our kids and us.
Meanwhile, the medical teams continue to provide treatment to migrants who got sick or got wounded during the long walks, especially people who have feet injuries.
An Ecuadorian court is hearing the case of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange in Quito. Our correspondent Denise Herrera has been following the case closely and brings us this report.
Legal action against the Foreign Minister José Valencia and the prosecutor of Ecuador, Íñigo Salvador, has started. The defense team of the founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, his lawyer here in Ecuador, Carlos Poveda, has started his intervention where he said Ecuador is violating the fundamental rights and freedom of the founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange. He is also asking to the authorities of Ecuador to suspend this protocol implemented by the authorities of Ecuador. He also said nobody has responded of this protocol, and he is asking to suspend this protocol and could to restart the communications inside the embassy in London. Under this, the first intervention in favor of the government of Ecuador was the lawyer of the foreign minister. His lawyer said Ecuador is not violating his fundamental rights and freedom, and he also said Ecuador was taking care of Julian Assange for 6 years. After this, we'll talk the prosecutor Íñigo Salvador when he will present his argument.
There will now be weekly non-stop flights from Russia to Jamaica. The measure came as Russian tourists no longer needed entry visas to stay in Jamaica for up to 90 days. The first flight by Russian airline Norwinds was welcomed on Friday with 300 tourists aboard. $1 billion worth of new investment is to be pumped into Barbados' economy through financing of various projects. These include the Sandals Beach Hotel, Chargicles Medical Complex, and new accommodation for students of Ross University. Early this month, Barbados agreed to host students who were displaced by Hurricane Maria's destruction of Dominica last year. Work is scheduled to start in January. Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley has delivered the keynote address to the annual conference of Barbados Labour Party. Speaking at the Lodge School on the second day of the 80th conference, she presented her 5-month report card. Mottley called on supporters to stay focused and say the party was given a mandate like no other in the history of the country. The Labour Party took office last May 24th, winning all 30 seats in Parliament. Doctors from Venezuela and Cuba have arrived in Suriname as part of the Petrocaribe's regional integration agreement. They will provide aid to low-income patients suffering from eye diseases. The Office of Petrocaribe said via Twitter the Venezuela Medical Mission plans to perform approximately 27 surgeries with patients with various diseases within the framework of the Petrocaribe Cooperation Agreement. More than 2 million people have attended the Day of the Dead parade in Mexico. Allegorical floats, giant puppets, skull face paint, and main characters from Mexican culture line up in the Paseo de la Reforma in Mexico City. Celebrated for the third time in a row, this year's theme focused on migration, which features African and Spanish migrants. The Mexican Day of the Dead celebrations are known worldwide, famous for their colorful traditions. We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on Telesur. An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Reports say the Pentagon might soon send thousands of additional U.S. troops to the border with Mexico to try to stop the Central American caravan. The Pentagon has declined to comment on the potential number of troops, but U.S. officials estimate it could be much higher than 800 announced earlier. The troops could be sent as early as Tuesday. A woman has blown herself up in Tunisia's capital, Tunis, wounding 9 people. The blast took place on the central Habib Babiwa Avenue near city's landmark municipal theater and the French embassy. The Ministry of Interior say 8 policemen were among the wounded. Rescue workers and ambulance rushed to the scene. A Lion Air passenger jet carrying 189 people has crashed into the sea shortly after taking off. The plane was on its way to Pangkal Panjang from Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, when it lost contact with air traffic control. Rescuers are retrieving the remains of the victims. Rescuers are also trying to recover the main body of the plane. This morning, I instructed Search and Rescue Agency Chief, assisted by the military and national police, to conduct a search and rescue operation as soon as possible for the victims. Meanwhile, tearful relatives of passengers are waiting on the airport where the flight was scheduled to land. They say they are waiting for official updates on their family situation, but search teams and officials are estimating there are no survivors. The President of the UN General Assembly has met the Pope to discuss the situation of migrants and other issues, including climate change. Maria Fernanda Espinosa, who was previously Ecuador's foreign minister, says she wanted to thank Pope Francis for the important role he has played in defending migrants and refugees. She said they also agreed that only a multilateral approach can tackle the needs and problems of humanity. Saudi Arabia's public prosecutor has met his Turkish counterpart in Istanbul regarding the murder investigation of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The Saudi prosecutor is also said to visit his consulate where Khashoggi was killed. He traveled to Istanbul after acknowledging last week the killing was premeditated. Germany's Angela Merkel says she will not run for a fifth term. Here's more on that and some other news from around the world.
Germany's Angela Merkel has announced that she would step down as the Chancellor at the end of her 4th term in 2021. She has been in power since 2005. The announcement came following weak performance by her centre-right party, the Christian Democratic Union, in recent elections. She has also said she would quit as the president of the CDU she has been leading since 2000. Merkel has been a dominant figure in the European politics for more than a decade. Pope Francis has denounced the attack on a Pittsburgh synagogue in which 11 people were killed. The attack happened when a shooter burst into the Tree of Life synagogue and fired at the worshippers. The Pope spoke to pilgrims in St. Peter's Square after Mass and called for eliminating hotbeds of hate.
Dear brothers and sisters, I express my closeness to the city of Pittsburgh in the United States of America, and in particular to the Jewish community stricken yesterday by a terrible attack on the synagogue. May God welcome the dead in His peace, comfort their families and support the wounded. All of us in reality are wounded by this inhumane act of violence. May the Lord help us to put out the hotbeds of hate that flare up in our societies, strengthening a sense of humanity, respect for life, moral and civil values, and the holy fear of God, who is love and father of all.
Leicester City fans have paid tribute to the owner of the football club who was killed in a helicopter crash in the United Kingdom. Vijay Shivardhana Prabha was among 5 people aboard the helicopter when it crashed into flames after a Premier League match on Saturday. He was popular with supporters after buying the poor-performing club in 2010. It then went on to win the Premier League title in 2016. Fans laid shirts and flowers outside the stadium in tribute to him.
Sri Lanka's president has dismissed his prime minister, accusing him of conspiring to kill him. The president has chosen his former political rival, Mahinda Rajapaksa, to form a new cabinet. His supporters denounced several conspiracies, but this is the first time it was confirmed by the head of state himself. Heavy rains have caused floods and landslides in the Italian village of Ovaro in its surrounding areas. Rain has damaged houses and properties in the area of the Friuli Venezia Giulia region. The local government is calling on authorities to help with the damage. We come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find at our website at telesurtv.net/English. And for our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on StarSat channel 461 in South Africa and channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.